Opioid addiction is a national public health crisis that affects individuals and families regardless of their age, race, or income. The statistics are overwhelming. More than 130 people die from opioid addiction every day. But there is hope. Recovery is possible. The information contained in these podcasts is solely for informational purposes and should not replace advice from a medical provider when making healthcare decisions. This podcast contains opinionated content and may not reflect the opinions of any organization this podcast is affiliated with. We will discuss opioid use and opioid treatment, which may be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. In Season 2, we'll be focusing on the next generation of young people facing the opioid crisis.
Today on Someone You Know, we're joined by the Honorable John F. White Jr., President and CEO of the Consortium in Philadelphia, and Kyle Shearer, who benefited from the Consortium's services and support on his journey to recovery. On this episode, we discuss how individuals can remain committed to recovery during times of transition amid financial, family, and social pressures, as well as the impact the pandemic has had on individuals struggling with or in recovery from substance use disorder. We also dive into how we can make services more effective and the incredible need to reach young people with those services. I'm your host, Heather Major, and this is Someone You Know. Thank you both for being here today on the Someone You Know podcast. I'm truly thrilled and honored to be joined today by the Honorable John F. White Jr., who is President and CEO of the Consortium in Philadelphia, and Kyle Shearer, who is a client of the Consortium. Before we dive into the conversation, it would be great for our listeners to hear a little bit more about yourselves. John, if you wouldn't mind, could we start with you?
Surely. And thanks again for inviting us and for this service that you're providing. I grew up here in Philadelphia. My grandparents were both farmers, one in Maryland and one in Georgia. So I learned something, through all aspects of my family about service. Service was a conversation that took place at our kitchen table literally almost every night. As I got older and finished college and came back, I started out as a community organizer at a time when gang violence in Philadelphia was raging. My job was to help work with students, identify some potential, and expose them to other aspects of our society that they might not otherwise have an opportunity to experience. And it was on that I got elected to public office. But in 1976, I got elected to the state legislature. My work in the legislature was all about criminal justice, juvenile justice reform, and human services. I went to city council some years later. As Secretary of Welfare, my late wife, who was then my ex-wife, suffered seriously with mental illness. The very system that I was responsible for overseeing failed her. She showed up at a clinic seeking help, and she was refused. The first thing I did when I came to the consortium, we turned nobody away. Whether you have insurance, no matter where you live, if you seek our help, we're there to provide it. So today, 19 years later, we have turned not one person away who has sought our help. On the addiction side, the consortium was the first methadone clinic in the state of Pennsylvania. We're here to serve. There are people who are in need. 16,000 people a year come through our doors seeking service that we provide. And I think when you hear from Kyle, you'll understand that this is a difficult journey, but it is not one that you have to take alone. So thank you again for having us.
Kyle, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Kyle Shearer. I'm 41. I born and raised in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia. I was born. Then I moved to the Northeast for my high school years. But first 14 years of my life, I lived in Kensington, where the opioid addiction hits hard. I didn't really realize or understand it as much back then. But as I grew up, just knew something wasn't right between my dad and my mom. And my dad got sober around, I was 9, I think. So I always grew up I played sports. Soccer was the main thing in my life. Played out through all high school and a year of college I played. And I was all-American, all-state, all-conference, all that kind of stuff. I did very well. I just didn't do very well at school. So things happened. I had to drop out. But I tore my ACL playing soccer, and that's how I was introduced to opiates, Percocets, and stuff like that. And when I took it, it took the pain away, but it also gave me this. I would say that I was a shy kid growing up. When I took these drugs, it brought me out of this shell that I was in. I fell in love with it. It took me to places I never thought I would go. I always said I didn't want to be like my dad as an alcoholic or a drug addict. I have great admiration for my father, but me tearing my ACL started this whole thing. Like, I'm the baby of the family, but I got older sisters and brothers that do very well for themselves, and I feel like didn't live up to the standards of my family. I always felt like the black sheep. Always felt like I did not belong. My family never thought of me that way. It was in my head, and I think mental health goes along with the addiction. I just I want to thank Mr. White for everything he started and how he started it. Because if I didn't have that help, I won't be sitting here talking to you guys today. That's just reality of the situation. And then there was just a moment of clarity that I had and went to rehab. That was in 2011. I had my ups and downs since, but if it wasn't for the consortium in 2011, like I said, I would not be here.
I think one of the most important things he said is that realizing his value, that he wasn't alone, that he was embraced by his family and embraced by the folks that I work with here at the consortium. Your journey is never ending. So embrace it and go on through it. Keep moving.
Thank you.
Wow, Heather, there's wisdom in his comments. What about relapse, Kyle? Have you experienced that over the years?
Absolutely. Like I said, I had my ups and downs into this program. When I first got on, I was doing well, but I got locked up, and I had to I got locked up in Bucks County, so I had to detox off the methadone and medication, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't a pretty sight. When I came back, and then I had to start all over. But like you said, you didn't refuse me, and I didn't have insurance. I was one day out of jail trying to get back on the program. It took a little bit, but you didn't refuse me. They got me back on. Like I said, it's just a blessing.
It's amazing, Heather, that he reflects on the time, that the ups and downs, and it gets etched in your memory.
Yes.
And remembering is a good thing because you know what it's like not to be high.
Right. Let's talk about this a little bit more, if you both wouldn't mind. John, this is part of your life's work, the consortium, and I think for our listeners who may not be familiar, I'll set this up as the city of Philadelphia is a city of many firsts, as we know. But even within the consortium, has accountability for some of those firsts, right? First methadone clinic, and I believe the first mental health agency in Philadelphia. But in addition to that, what are some of the services, the programs, not just the educational resources, but some of the great individuals who are also committing themselves to this field for the betterment of others? Can you tell us a little bit more about the consortium and share more about how Kyle has so well articulated? It is not a linear path, it is not a linear journey. It takes resiliency, resolve. It takes a lot of support. So give us a little bit more about that support that comes from the consortium. And clearly, the consortium cares, right? Open door, open arms policy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, often you will find yourself with an agency or a group that does the treatment. Has great counseling, great therapy, but a lot goes into recovery that is beyond a good counselor and a good therapist. The supports, what they now call the social determinants, are important, and they can either contribute to your recovery or they can become an obstacle along the way to that journey. So we try to recognize that we're doing a couple of things that are very, very unique. We have a computer lab
Mhm.
where members can go up to the second floor and utilize the computer. It can help enhance their computer literacy skills. They can use it for their personal stuff, paying bills. And we have an employment program called Let's Talk About It, where we actually contact local businesses in hopes that we can bring them into the fore of being willing to take a chance on someone and to teach them and to train them. And then there's a first. We're the only agency that has what we call an integrated healthcare model, where individuals wanting to see a doctor, see a nurse, are free to see ours, who will conduct tests for hepatitis and diabetes. They'll put you together with a primary care physician. We've got this partnership with Spectrum to help follow up on some of the incidents that we discovered in talking to folks. The group therapy is very, very important. We have members who work, Heather, during the day,
Hmm.
and they're not available, for the necessary counseling or treatment. So we extended our hours to make sure that they're available on evenings and on Saturdays to make up for groups and for individual therapy. That's just in the addiction side. When you get into the mental health side, we are probably the most uh, service diverse agency in the city, in that we have a number of child and family programs that operate that have proven to be very, very successful. We have case management services along with the treatment therapy that is provided. And what we try to do is to link folks together. We know, for example, that if someone suffers a crisis in their home, a mental health crisis, that individual is not the only one affected.
Right.
Everyone in that household is affected by it. Now, today, in this climate, in this environment, the incidents of trauma are just, it'll blow your mind. Think about it. You're traumatized by the news. You're
Hmm.
traumatized by your living conditions in your neighborhood. You're traumatized when you recognize that you really want to do something and you haven't been doing it. It's all about trauma. And trying to work with folks through that trauma is something that we thought was so important that we are actually certified in what they call long exposure to trauma, where we try to treat that. We are family oriented. We're trying to bring families together to help support people, whether it's through their mental health or through their addiction recovery. So all of these things together, I think, put us in a position to be of more help. Now, you got to remember, you can offer it, but it also has to be accepted.
Right.
So marketing it, letting people know, gaining their confidence to try it and let us help is also very, very important.
Mr. White, but you spoke about Spectrum, and I have nothing but praise about that place. I had hepatitis C. Like I said, I didn't have insurance, so I couldn't go get help nowhere. I can say I'm hepatitis C free today. I did the treatment, and yeah, like Spectrum. I try to tell people about that place all the time. It's just they're there to help, just like you guys, and want to help. Uh, but like you said, you can market it and you can put it out there, but people, you have to be willing to go and take advantage of these things.
We have to also thank Independence Blue Cross
Absolutely.
because they have provided funding to help support some of our programs and their generosity. Uh, and I don't overlook those kinds of things. Through your foundation, you need to know that you are helping thousands of people.
I appreciate hearing that, and we certainly cannot do this work alone, as you know. It takes great people, exceptional leaders like yourself, and certainly this community approach, right? This involvement of trauma informed, community based, integrated care with family orientation. I mean, I have to tell you, there's a reason why the consortium has been around and is still incredibly relevant and respected all these years. Is because you're paying attention, you're meeting the needs, you're exceeding the needs or the wants, you're anticipating and learning and growing and applying what you're learning, and that is no small feat, because I feel like John, the need continues to grow, right?
Yes.
We're in the midst of not only an opioid crisis, that hasn't gone away, but we have a mental health crisis on our hands. And that has, major implications, particularly for our younger generation.
Yes,
Uh,
I was
I
getting ready to
Yeah,
say that's another tragedy that we're facing.
right. And there's a couple things that come to mind that I'd love to get your thoughts on. So I grew up with the AIDS epidemic, and it really was formative to my younger years. And here we are with this next generation that is growing up knowing the opioid crisis, knowing the opioid epidemic. And you mentioned resources, and I feel like part of the new narrative around addiction is, hey, how do we get more money, greater leadership, greater collaboration in the recovery space? Because recovery is possible, but a lot of funding goes to prevention, a lot of funding goes to treatment. I don't think we would argue the importance of both of those things, but there's a lot that needs to be done still for recovery. So I would love if we could merge those two things, John, and have a conversation about this next generation and something we're working on with our foundation, and be a partner to academic institutions who want to provide collegiate recovery programs on their campuses. So you have a student who chooses sobriety, who needs to have, maintain recovery, wants to go to, wants to be in college, stay in college, get the education to go on and continue to do great things. This is a way, right? Collegiate recovery programs are a way to provide those supports in a community where the student is. So I would love to get your thoughts on all those things, if you wouldn't mind. I know I threw a lot at you there, but resources for recovery. How do we make the pie, the piece of the pie, a little bit bigger?
Well,
How do
I
we
think,
help this next generation and this particular focus of our foundation, which is collegiate recovery?
thank you, because that's a phase that we're entering into, just right there on the campus or adjacent to the campus of the University of Pennsylvania and Drexel. If I invest in roads and bridges, and I repair roads and bridges, it's evident. Everyone that uses that road, everyone that uses that bridge, they see the improvement that is being made. But when you fund prevention, nobody knows about it. They don't count the number of people who, because of what you do and because of what's available, don't get addicted, don't suffer with serious mental illness.
Right? Are diverted from being in the system at all. So
Exactly.
mm-hmm.
The resources in addictions is particularly of concern, because we do this for free. Again, our computer lab is free. The integrated health model, it's free. The jobs program, it's free. We operate in those spaces without adequate support, and in some cases without any support from funding from government. Now, translate that into the young adult population, the late teens, actually the early teens. What is available to get them on, to keep them from getting on the wrong path? Remember when the big thing was just say no?
Yes.
Are you old enough to remember that?
That's my generation. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's your generation.
I'm
just
43.
Say no.
So yes, the egg cracking in the frying pan.
There
Yes.
you go.
This is your brain on drugs. Yep.
All right. So now, what are we saying today? That's right. That silence that you just heard.
Oh,
No one's saying just say no.
wow.
As weak as that may be, as all that stuff, right, that we criticize, just that phrase, like that was enough. What is the message today? I dare tell you there is none. Everything has been overshadowed by this sick pandemic that we were experiencing. Hopefully, now that people have been able to tie this together, because now with COVID, non-discriminatory, doesn't discriminate by age, doesn't discriminate by color or where you live. Guess what else doesn't discriminate? Addiction.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Mental illness. So how we begin to help people achieve mental wellness is important. And there's got to be more emphasis placed on that. And that's all about prevention. And so the work of the foundation, focusing on the colleges and the younger population, you're really stepping into the gap.
No, I think you're right, and I appreciate that perspective, because we've done a lot of work to figure out where we can try to be most effective with the partners we have. Right, we're here sitting in a region that is known for meds and eds, and we have these great institutional partners in these universities and colleges, from the community colleges to the Ivy Leagues, and they want to be involved, right? And I think if this is the way, profound or small, that we can have a role and make a change, we're certainly looking to do that. So I think for our region, I'm excited about that being an opportunity to lead in our region, because I think others will look to us. And again, going back to my earlier comment about Philadelphia being a city of firsts, I think that's sort of ingrained in the DNA of this city. Is if you don't lead, who will? Right?
That's exactly right. And you know what? People may not know that Philadelphia is the richest service city in the country. There are more services available at the community level here in the city of Philadelphia than any other city in the United States. We don't know it. We don't use it. So we have a community education component where we find ourselves going out and talking to community residents about tips to stay mentally well, tips to assist in your recovery. We're in the middle of this whole mobile crisis with the conflict between law enforcement and those who are in some sort of recovery, whether that's mentally ill or whether it's an addiction. Those things are important to provide that kind of education. We're at a point now, we're giving out magnets to our members so you can get direct help and not involve law enforcement. Listen, it works. It works. And I'm proud that Philadelphia is on the verge of really doing something new and different, another first in the way we're approaching this, both with a community response as well as an integrated response with law enforcement.
I think that's great. I mean, I can honestly say this is just such an enriching conversation to be able to have with both of you, because I think that it illuminates so many of the things that we've been talking about throughout this season. There's a stigma, but there are also services, right? There's also help when help is ready to be received. And the consortium is a trusted source for services and an open door.
What are you seeing? I mean, we're here on the ground getting it done. You're looking at it from a different level. Tell us what you're seeing.
I'll speak for what I know. Is I think that for funders, you're looking to have greater impact. I think that we'll continue to support programs and services that address access issues in our communities, whether that's to primary care. You mentioned Spectrum, who is proudly supported by the IBC Foundation, and many other health centers, John, who some you began in your tenure within the Philadelphia Housing Authority. So we have that. We have, we believe very much in being able to have access to mental health services, substance use disorder treatment, and recovery programs. But I think you're absolutely right that the city of Philadelphia has an abundance of services. And I think from our point of view, not being a direct provider, but being someone who can invest in those programs and services and those organizations, help them become sustainable, but also collaborate, bring together organizations who are doing or want to do things and greater things for the community and with the community. That's our role. And I think that we're seeing more of that now among organizations, because quite frankly, I think the pandemic has had effects at all levels, right? And organizations are now looking at ways of being able to partner more formally and to collaborate more impactfully. We also want to be doing our job of helping to identify where there might be gaps. You mentioned earlier about where government funding goes and where it doesn't go. Part of our responsibility is to look where it doesn't go, right?
Yes.
and to find the organizations that are doing that great work like yours on the ground, and to be able to provide those financial resources.
I think we can say without any fear of successful contradiction is that COVID has shown us what we can do when we thought we couldn't.
That's right. Well said. That's right.
Okay? Therapy, telehealth.
Oh, yes.
Right? COVID. If it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't be talking about that being accessible to poor people.
I always say this, COVID was a blessing in many ways because of the resources it gave us. It helped me and saved my life, actually, because I don't know if I would ever made that decision to go away if it wasn't for COVID. And you know, like I had COVID. Me and my fiance had COVID for like a month, and it was the worst thing I've ever experienced. I've been through dope sickness. That was the worst thing I've ever went through. But you know, I got through it, and I didn't have to use to get through it.
Wow,
You know?
that was poignant what you just said. You didn't have to use to get through it.
Yes, I didn't have to, and it's hard for me to give myself credit sometimes. You know, I've been through a lot, and I always think the negative first, and it seems like now today I think of the positive and how I can be a better person each and every day when I wake up. Now I pray for another day so I can at least, I mean, if I don't help somebody, but I help myself and I stay sober, you know, that's a big thing because then my family don't have to worry about me.
Celebrate your victories, Kyle.
Absolutely. Yeah, because now my mom and dad can go to bed at night and not worry about a phone call they're going to receive. And I put them through misery, and I split my family up for 10 years. I didn't talk to my sister for 10 years, but now I talk to her. Now we're a whole family. It's been rough. My dad's been in the hospital and out of hospital last couple months. My dad is my hero, man. Like I never wanted to be like him, as like I said when I was growing up playing sports, as the alcoholic and the drug addict that he was. And I ended up being like him in that way. But I always said I wish and I hope that I lead a life that he's proud of today. I can show up and be there for my family today, and like you know, it's a blessing.
I want to thank you both, Kyle. I think for your candid honesty, for making sure that our listeners are hearing that it can be a very tough road, but resiliency, supports, giving yourself the credit you deserve, and what John has been saying, and making sure you celebrate all of those big and little wins in your life. Thank you for being here to share those with us, and just for being able to share with us your story, and for being here. Honestly, it's been a thrill and pleasure to meet you. And John, your leadership, you know, it is of legend status, and you are still very personally and professionally committed to the betterment of people, and particularly in the Philadelphia community. And we can't thank you enough for that. So I look forward to our continued conversations and hopefully collaborations.
Yes.
But honestly, just thank you both for agreeing to be a part of our Someone You Know podcast, being voices to help break the stigma of addiction, and for the great people and work that you do every day to make sure that folks have access to the care they need, but also to make sure that we're still remembering at the end of the day that recovery is possible. We have to give people a chance.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
If you or someone you know is suffering from opioid addiction, please visit ibxfoundation.org/SYK. The link is in our show notes below.